Again. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon to who is joining from China. My name is Alessio Pettino. I'm the knowledge coordinator of the USME Center in Beijing. So it's a great pleasure to be here today and to welcome you to this webinar we're organizing with the China Britain Business Council, CBBC, on food and drink. As you know, of course, food and drink is a very important sector for Europe in general, and it occupies a pretty important percentage of exports to China, and at the same time the sector went through huge changes last year, in particular relating to the customs. So this is why we decided to organize this webinar today to provide you an overview of what's happening and yeah, which will be useful for you. Next slide, please. So basically, this webinar will be divided into two parts. The first part, yeah, there will be a couple of presentations about the macro picture, new changes in terms of market access, regulations, but also in terms of logistics. So, you know, logistics is also another area which has been seriously impacted recently. The second part of this webinar, there will be a roundtable discussion where we have a few experts who will be answering questions related to food and beverage. And then there will be a Q&A session at the end. But of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, you are very welcome to write them in the Q&A button in the Zoom. Next slide, please. Before starting, I would like to introduce very briefly the USME Center. The USME Center is a project funded by the EU Commission. It has been around for 12 years already, and it will continue to be so for the next few years at least. The current phase will end soon, but there will be another one to come to follow. The purpose of this project is to help to support European small and medium-sized enterprises to get ready to do business with China. And we are implemented by a consortium of 5 chambers of commerce and business organizations, which you can find on the bottom. And CBBC is one of them. We, of course, partner with a lot of agencies, government, business, and we have a physical office in Beijing, which is where I am. Next slide, please. Basically, we try to help European SMEs in 4 main ways. The first one, we have what we call Knowledge Center. Basically, we have we produce reports and case studies and guidelines on different aspects of doing business in China. We also have an advice center, which is basically a sort of help desk where European companies, but also business organizations such as Chamber of Commerce can contact us, and we have experts who can answer your questions, also technical questions, not only basic general questions, but also very, very technical ones. Training center, which is basically what we're doing today. We organize webinars, workshops on different topics, and last we have an advocacy platform, through which we try to disseminate information about upcoming regulations, drafts for comments, and so on. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, I promised. An overview of upcoming activities. Again, food and beverage is a very important sector for us, and in fact, tomorrow we're also going to have another webinar on this topic, and especially on geographical indications. And you are most welcome to join, of course. But there will be many others also in different sectors, retail, fashion, and so on. Actually, I mentioned before, we have this knowledge center. We produce guidelines sometimes, and last month we produced some guidelines about the new customs regulations. Basically, we answer some questions about common issues encountered during the registration on the customs platform, and you can find them on this link here. And we also have a webinar on the topic with a GAC officer, by the way, on our YouTube channel. We're also going to have 2 upcoming reports in the sector, one on pork and one on private labels, and that's pretty much it, as the expert I mentioned already. So yeah, that will end my introduction. Again, welcome. Thank you again for being here with us today. I will give the floor now to Goran from CBBC, who will then introduce the speakers for today. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Alessio. Now I will introduce the speakers for the presentations and the speakers, the KOLs we have for the roundtable. So first, for compliance side, today we have the honor to have Ali Wang, who is the consultant for foodmate.com. So Ali graduated from the US and with a master's degree and now works as a consultant with FoodMate's International Food Safety Compliance team. She focuses on tracking, analyzing, and interpreting the latest food safety, import and export regulatory changes in China. So Ali will be talking for the first part of this roundtable presentation. She will be delivering the latest update on the compliance part, what we should be looking out for in 2022 in terms of regulatory. All right. And we have James. James is the director of Hayton International. He has extensive experiences working with food and drink technology and companies from other industries. James has around 12 years of experience working with Hayton International, which helps SMEs access the China market as a buyer or suppliers. Hayton's team has excellent knowledge, experience, and connections in all key aspects of import and export. James is very much an expert on logistics, so he will be talking about the challenges we're facing today in the logistics sector and how we can prepare ourselves to solve these challenges. And for roundtable today, as panelists, we have Paris Yuan, who is the business development manager at DKSH China. Paris, she has plenty of expertise in the cross-border e-commerce industry, international trade, and retail sector in China from her 6 years of work experience. And she is once a part of a kickoff team for Royal Mail Tmall flagship store as a TP. So she will be talking today about the snack sector and as an importer, what they are looking for, what are the key qualities of brands that they think will be successful in China market. And we'll have Aaron, who is the head of Europe at the Silk Initiative, the TSI. TSI is one of the world's few Asia-based consumer goods brands consultancies sitting at the intersections of foresight, strategy, innovation, and creative development. Based in London, Aaron leads TSI's work for their clients based in Europe and the US. So Aaron today will bring us insights and his opinion on the health and wellness sector. And he will be talking about the latest trend in the sector and what brands should look out for in order to be successful in China market. And last but not least, we will also have Stanley. Stanley is the brand director of wine and whiskey sector at Telford China. Stanley has over 15 years of experience working in fashion, finance, wine and spirits, and other industries. In November 2015, she joined Telford China, a company that specializes in establishing foreign brands by supporting their local adaptation and strategy and planning, promotion and operation, and budget and inventory management. So Stanley works with the brand's owners. She develops a strong brand positioning, and her strong commercial awareness helps them to achieve both annual and long-term business goals. And before I go offline, I would like to introduce to you our masterclass series that are coming online, actually offline in our offices in London in February and March. So on February 24th and March 3rd, we have two master classes that are going to focus on retail and e-commerce landscape in China. And on 17th of March, we have another masterclass session in our London office offline, which is going to focus on health and wellness. So for those that would be interested in these topics, please feel free to explore our sector page at CBBC website. So the registration link and more details will be on our website. So to contact us, you can either contact me or my sector counterpart, Antoinetta, based in the UK. So we'll be sharing all the presentations today, so no worries, you will get our contact information. Without further delay, I would give the floor to Ali to give us an update on the compliance side. So to you now, Ali, can you please share your screen?
Sure. And share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Let's start from the beginning. Okay. Oops. So thank you so much, Ms. Goran, and good morning, everyone. My name is Aoyun Wang from Food&Drink Global, and it's a great pleasure today to have this opportunity to talk about the topic regarding regulatory changes coming up in 2022 and how to prepare for these new changes. And as we know, the GAC has released the 2 decrees, which are 248 and 249 last year, and they have officially been effective on January the 1st, 2022. And I have been told that many enterprises still have many questions about these 2 decrees, especially 248. So my topic today will be focused on these 3 parts. That is a brief introduction of Decree 248 and the registration procedure. And the third part will be GB 7718, the labeling requirements for prepackaged food. So the Decree 248 is regulations of overseas manufacturers of imported foods, and the registration scope includes production, processing, and storage enterprises. Based on Decree 248 and the Chinese food safety law, food additives and food-related products do not need to be registered, but some food additives were imported as minor ingredients. Now we have to determine whether they belong to the registration scope based on their HS or CIQ code. Here, there are some notes we need to pay attention to, that the only way to determine the product category should be HS code and CIQ code installed in the single window registration system, product type query function. I will explain it later. For imported foods produced before January the 1st, 2022, can still follow the original regulations that the registration number on the inner and outer packaging may not be marked. But except for the health food and the special dietary foods, the number of the other imported foods can be printed or additionally fixed. But these 2 kinds of foods have to be printed on the package. And it is recommended to mark the leading word registration number on packaging to facilitate traceability and the consumer identification, although there is no specific labeling requirement for the registration number. But it is required to use Chinese leading word on the prepackaged label. And the last one is one manufacturer can have multiple registration number, but different manufacturers cannot share the same registration number. So here I would like to take a case, for example, like for the transport packaging, which we call outer packaging on the pallet, the registration number has to be marked. For the inner packaging, which is the minimal sales unit, we also need to mark the registration number on the package at the box. But for the independent packaging in the minimal sales unit that cannot be sold separately, the number is not required to be marked. And there's another condition. The transport packaging need to be labeled as well, but if the independent packaging in the sales unit can be sold separately, for example, this the smallest pieces of chocolates can be sold independently, then we have to label the registration number. Now we have to check whether the information on the label can be read clearly. Usually if the box is not transparent like this one, of course, we cannot see the content inside, so that the registration number should be marked on the box. Otherwise, if it is clear and we can see the label on the smallest piece, then the box do not need to be marked with the registration number. If this is clear, let's move on to the registration procedure. Depending on whether the producer needs to be recommended by local competent authority, the account can be obtained either through the assignment of the competent authority or by self-application. If your product belongs to self-registration, Then the step 1 is to register an account through this portal, this one. And you will need to fill in all this information with asterisk. Here are two things to note. The username, located country, region, and the register number cannot be modified once you register. And the register number is a string of numbers that are issued by local competent authority that can prove your own identity. If your government do not issue this kind of number, it can be replaced by business registration number, a tax number, and VAT number extra. And if you see this interface, that means your account had been registered successfully. Then the step 2 is to log in the system, and you can maintain your account information by clicking the account name on the upper right corner here. After entering the interface of user information management, the password, cell phone number, and the contact person, workplace, and some other information can be modified by clicking the modify button here. And you can also complete the register number if you didn't fill in this information in the first step. But remember, this can be only submitted one time. So make sure you enter the correct number here. Then you should select your product category through application for register button here. Each pictured category will be linked with one single registration number. That means if your, for example, if your enterprise produce both packaged drinking water and the fruit juice, then you will need to submit 2 application forms, and hopefully you will get 2 registration number and 2 different registration number. As I mentioned earlier, the product type query, the product category can be queried according to the HS code or product name through this product type query function. And this module can also tell you whether your product need to be officially recommended registration. After selecting the correct category, you will be required to fill in the corresponding application form. There are 2 pages that you have to be filled in, and required fields are marked with the asterisk in the interface. On the basic information page, these 3 fields that I highlighted will be automatically filled by the system according to the information that the user had been entered during registration. The gray colored fields cannot be edited because this information will be given by the GAC after they approve your registration application. When you scroll down, you will find licensed production certificate is required to be uploaded. This must be one or several certificates that can prove your qualification of produce such products that to be registered or added to China. And if there are multiple products to be exported to China, the information of each product shall be entered as well. The second page is production-related information. For most product categories, such as the fruit and vegetable juice here, the raw materials, ingredient information, and the production correspondence are optional. If you want to enter those information, you can click the Add button and bring up the entry interface. And the water for production and processing is required as well. You can choose either public water or enterprise-owned water source based on the reality. If you choose enterprise-owned water source, then the whether to disinfect the self-owned water source and the disinfection treatment method for self-owned water source, these 2 items will become required. Description of processing method are required as well. The attachment here is optional, but if you have multiple products, we strongly recommend you to upload the flow chart. And the third page is declaration of manufacturer. This is the easiest part, I think. You can download the document template by clicking the blue word link, enterprise declaration here, and follow the instruction, let's sign and upload the scanned copy. Remember, it's a scanned copy, like this one. And this part is done. Then go to the next page. You can review all the attachments you have uploaded. If everything is correct, just click preview button, and on the bottom of the preview page, we can click submit button, and the next is to wait for the outcome. So this is the application steps. I think many of you have noticed the system has added a new function called application for modify. In this section, you can only find the application forms that had been approved by GAC. If any information need to be modified, just click the modify button here. Then you will enter a similar interface as original application form. The registration number, registration date, and the expiration date will show up this time. The gray area cannot be modified anymore. That means if you want to change this information, you have to submit a new application. This information cannot be just modified through this function. And let's see. When you scroll down on the basic information page and look carefully, there is a qualification obtained of registered in China. Those are the products that have been approved by the GAC. And if you want to add more products, just use this section to add more products in the same category. The second page, production related information, has no change basically. If you need to modify anything, just change it. But in the third page, declaration information, you have to upload the supporting materials to modify information here. This is a new section. You might wonder what are the supporting materials here. If you log on to the GAC official website and choose Internet plus custom module, or just enter this address here, then you will see the interface like this. Then click instruction and go to the left menu called administrative review and approval audit. Approval. On the left menu, choose import food enterprise registration and download Annex 5. Then you will get a form like this. It is currently only available in Chinese, unfortunately, so I translated the content for your reference. For example, if you're you may take a screenshot here, or yeah, I think the PPT will be shared, so don't worry. If your enterprise name had been changed, then the supporting material will be a certificate of change issued by local competent authority, and then you need to upload this certificate together with this Annex 5 form. The two documents both needed. So if you have other operation questions, you can download the manual from the system, and it is very helpful too. And the third topic today will be GB 7718, the general standard for the labeling of prepackaged foods. The exposure draft had been released, and we have heard that the final version might be effective this year. So I also did some research that in recent 5 years, nearly 12% of disqualification reason of imported food from EU are label problems. So plus this version has added a chapter 7 specifically for the labeling requirements of imported food. So I listed some main contents of this chapter. The first are some general requirements, and second is ingredient requirements such as water and single raw materials that added during production should also be included. The third is contact information. This part has no change with current standard. The name address and contact information of manufacturers still were not required to be labeled. And the fourth part is the country region of a region. In the draft, it says the country region of imported prepackaged foods raw materials can also be marked. The fifth is the date labeling. Some products do not have the production date marked, but Chinese government still requires the food enterprise to label production date according to the product's shelf life and best before date indicated on the original package. So here, other requirements including application population, daily values, or directions labeling, and the quality grade extra. This is a very important standard, so I hope you can keep an eye on this. Okay, so this is all my sharing of today, and after the Q&A part, if you still have more questions, you can contact us through this online channel, and we welcome you to bring up any questions. Thank you. I will pass on to the host.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, so please stay on a little bit. We'll open the floor to Q&A after the roundtable. Thank you very much. So now let's please welcome James from Hayden, who will give us an update on logistics and the challenges we're facing and the possible solutions. James, over to you, please.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much to Aoyun for a very interesting presentation. We will touch upon the single window during this presentation. I'm not sure how many people have been shipping to China food and drink products in the last 2 years, but if anyone's been watching the news, then they will have noticed supply chains and logistics has been very, very challenging. So we'll look briefly at what's happened in the last 2 years, but I won't dwell too much on that. We'll look at what's going to be happening in 2022 and then moving forwards into the future to hopefully give you some ideas of how we can improve logistics and try and circumnavigate some of the challenges that we're facing. So for those that have been watching the media, then certainly the area that most people are concerned about is if you are doing business within the food and drink sector at the high rates. The current rates are unprecedented in terms of high costs. Many routes now are between 5 and 10 times higher than 2018 or 2019 rates. One of the other big headaches for food and drink producers, particularly if you're within the frozen and chilled sectors, is the shortage of reefer containers coming from Europe and the UK to China. This shortage doesn't seem like it's going to be shifting at all. We're also seeing a lot of congestion. That's at the ports in Europe and in China, but also in transit for sea shipping in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, and also for air freight through the Middle East, which again creates a lot of uncertainty. Trucking and driver shortages are again the same in Europe and in China. We're also seeing most of the different modes of transportation been under extreme stress. So even within the rail sector, which did pick up a little bit of capacity, there's a lot of congestion there as well now. We're seeing very high demand both on the Chinese side and on the European side, which again creates a lot of shortage in terms of capacity. And obviously, one of the main things that's affected everyone, whatever you're doing, is COVID. And like I say, we're seeing very different strategies in Europe and in the UK and in China. So again, that's going to create a lot of uncertainty going forwards. And I don't think we'll be very clear on how that's going to impact our operations and logistics really for the next 12 months at least. So As I said, the key thing here today is really to talk about looking forward. What can we do in 2022 and beyond to improve our business and make sure we can get products to the consumers? One of the only things we're certain about for this year, at least, it's going to be another challenging year. We're going to see a lot of new problems come up. We're going to have to be thinking on our feet and be working hard to try and navigate around some of these big problems that come at us from every single side. Global news coverage within logistics, again, is still really not giving us much good news. We've seen now Dalian, also Tianjin now have got a lot of restrictions in the port, which are COVID driven. We expect to see similar issues carrying on throughout 2022. We saw problems in 2021 with Yantian being closed and also Ningbo ports being closed. This causes lots of ripple out effects with products being shipped to different ports than you expect. So again, you really do need to be prepared for surprises. There's always ongoing problems with where the vessels are getting so big, the stacks are getting high, we're losing containers overboard. This can cause vessels to be diverted. So again, it's just a gentle reminder really to remember to buy marine insurance, because if you do have a problem, it can really impact your business. The UK and even some of the big European ports are still struggling. So again, there's a lot of containers on the ports. This is making picking up containers, dropping off containers much harder than in the past. Maybe some sort of semi-positive news. All of the big shipping lines are continuing to place big orders for new vessels, so that will gradually come online. But as we'll see in the presentation, much of this is going to be 2023, 2024 before it's really going to make a difference to how we operate on a day-to-day basis and how we change our plans. In terms of dedicated food and drink, if you've been importing frozen foods, chilled foods the past 2 years in China, then you'll have noticed there's a lot more requirements in terms of disinfection reports. Most of the products we're handling, whether by air or sea, have to be disinfected at the port of entry. Often we're having to do a secondary disinfection before we actually send to the warehouse, because the warehouse, to protect themselves, want dedicated disinfection reports. So again, this is an area to consider, because again, it's adding costs and time. This screenshot on the right here, this is actually from a WeChat discussion group, and one of the recent Beijing COVID cases has now been blamed on a postage parcel coming from overseas. The concern here is that whether for political or actual scientific reasons, if these cases are proven, then we're going to see a lot more concern about international shipping into China, and that's going to have repercussions in terms of efficiency. Following on from Aoyun's great presentation, we've got the single window requirement. From the shipments we've done at Heighton for this year, then it's relatively simple. If you're the manufacturer or the producer, you can produce all the materials. What we're seeing, it's a much bigger headache, is if you're going through wholesalers and resellers, because actually getting back to the producer, getting their teams to enter the products onto the single window platform can be very challenging, especially if you're working with larger producers. Trying to pin them down and actually get them to complete that's very difficult. Also within bigger companies, trying to identify who's responsible for that can be much harder. So certainly if you're planning a shipment, do prepare that the first and second shipments will be very challenging within the first half of 2022, but hopefully once the platform becomes more mature and people have worked through shipments, it will get easier. One of the big areas of concern and questions for everyone is, what will China's COVID policy be going forwards? I think a lot of us are waiting for the Olympics and the Lianghui to be completed and have fingers crossed that maybe some of our partners and customers can start traveling a little bit to China in Q2, Q3, maybe by Q4. So lots and lots of negatives and a few positives going forwards. I think, again, we'll send out this presentation and you can go through this in more detail and come back with any questions. But really what we can say here is it's going to be an unpredictable year. There's going to be a lot of inconsistency. So we all want about solutions. We can look at the news and get all of this news bites and that, but how can we improve how we work with China, improve how we get product to consumers? I think traditional best practices still remain. It's just a case of we now need to go through those on a more frequent basis. We need to plan. I think we need to look at not just a plan B, but maybe a C, D, and E. We need to start discussions and negotiations as early as possible, and being very open and discuss what happens. Certainly put forward lots of what if questions. What can we do? What happens if it's going to be delayed by 2 or 3 weeks? What would be the repercussions? Cooperation is even more important than ever. We need to develop the partnerships. We need to look at how we can strengthen those and gather different points of view. Again, we're seeing pressures on the production side in Europe, increasing costs, maybe delays. Similarly, we need to work with the importers and understand what the impact of delays on them and their customers are and keep their customers in the loop. So again, the communications, being flexible is vital as we go forwards. Personally, I've always looked at China, and you have to look at it in a long-term view. I don't think short-term views work. It's a very complex market. Different regions have different requirements. So we need to continue with that long-term planning. We need to factor in longer lead times. So within that, shelf life becomes very important. If you've got short shelf lives that were getting short before, you really need to look at whether you need to change to a different mode of transport, whether moving to rail or air, or whether you need to actually realign your portfolio and maybe look at products with longer shelf lives. We also, because of the longer lead times, need to look at how we ensure throughout the year or throughout the seasons we have a steady flow of product arriving and in production. This may require more smaller shipments rather than like a boom and bust where you ship a large amount of products, you then sell out and then you have a break. Certainly if you speak to consumers in China, they want something immediate. If they have to wait, they'll move to a different brand. So again, you need to be planning a good steady flow of product to meet consumer requirements. And really tying into this then, I think budgets, you do need to revise how you look at that. If you just look on a per shipment basis, then maybe it's not strategically sustainable to ship. But I think if you're looking at building your brand, looking at building the market, then I think there's lots of opportunities there. But again, you need to adjust your point of view. So I think really as we need to line up so many different problems, different challenges, but so you need to work together with your partners and line everything up, all your ducks in a line. I think relationships, again, we need to look at building those and being a lot more open. We need to avoid like point-to-point relationships where we're going through, say, a supplier talking to an individual manager or business owner in China. Look at how we can build up teams of people, make sure they're consistent, and how we can try and reach out to the consumer, but also communicate what's happening in the production. Gathering these diverse points of view is very important, and trying to break down gatekeepers. So again, if you're communicating with China, try not just to be speaking to one person. See if you can speak within their teams, speak with different people within different regions. Through the lack of traveling and everything, we really do need to leverage technology more and more. How do we look at localization on the Chinese side? Again, we're seeing, because of the breakdown of international travel, there's definitely a lot more divergence in local Chinese market. But also we need to communicate what the supplier's doing and thinking as well. We need to look beyond traditional partnerships. Are there partnerships maybe in the supplier side? Can you maybe join up with some of the other CBBC members and do joint shipments or where can you actually share experiences. So looking forwards further, I think 2023 is still going to be challenging. We're going to have global inflation. Hopefully we'll start seeing more capacity coming into shipping and air freight. We'll also slowly start seeing more international passenger travel, which should free up more air freight capacity. But on the other side, we're going to see increasingly challenges from environmental pressures, whether that's net zero. We're seeing new standards coming in for shipping. So again, lots more uncertainty in it. Very difficult to predict what the situation will be with shipping, but hopefully we start to see some of the rates reduce. Personally, I think 2024 we might see the rates for shipping drop dramatically. We're going to see the bulk of the new orders coming online. By then, hopefully, COVID will have standardized, and we should see the balance moving back to shippers and the clients away from the shipping lines and operators. We'll also start to see automation in the supply chain, which should increase more stability. But also we'll then start seeing other environmental factors certainly building up to speed. So thank you very much. I'm sure there's lots and lots of questions I haven't answered, but I'll be available at the end to talk about that. And please do add me on WeChat or on WhatsApp, and we can talk further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for your update and for your vision towards 2023 and 24. So for any logistic related questions for James, please type them in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and then we'll pass them on to James after the roundtable. Thank you very much. Now, can I please ask Paris and Aaron and Stanley, our panelists for the roundtable, to kind of unmute yourself and then start your video count. Good morning, Aaron.
Morning, morning.
Morning. And Stanley, and we have Paris. I know she's online, so I'm sure she's just turning on her camera. So thank you very much. We have the three experts from their respective areas. We have Paris from DKSH, and then Aaron from TSI, and Stanley from Telford. So from now, for the next 30 minutes or so, I will be having a roundtable discussion with the three of them. And then I'll be asking a whole bunch of questions for them. Hopefully we'll get some very lovely insights from these panelists. So I will start from Paris, as I know Paris has an appointment that she has to kind of leave at 6 o'clock. So Paris, thank you very much for joining us today. That we know you're from DKSH. I'm sure a lot of the audience today will be familiar with DKSH is one of the earliest, most renowned importers of all food and drink categories in China. So my first question to you, Paris, is that for a kind of mature or developed importer and distributor such as DKSH, what are the current product category focuses that you're having, and why are you focusing on these categories?
Okay, right. Our current portfolio is ambient prepacked food focusing, which includes chocolate and confectionery, snack and biscuits, dry grocery and beverage. The hero brands of each category are Helium from Belgium, Doritos from PepsiCo, Hellman condiments from Unilever, and Oatly drink. First of all, I have to say, as a Swiss listed company, everyone in our company are numbers driven and P&L focusing. We all are financial experts and strong in budgets. So in terms of why we are still limiting ourselves in ambient products, it's because of the cost efficiency of expanding the aircon and chilled logistics solutions. Unless we could sign off a super deal, which can contribute enough gross margin for us to develop. Of course, the supply chain is another significant challenge during COVID-19. It's facing everyone, not only us. Virus tests and disinfections are mandatory upon arrival. as well as the deliveries to customers. Especially for the chilled and frozen products, the requirements are more restricted than ambient products. So how to accelerate the process and issue the remaining shelf life is critical.
Thank you, Paris. So it's from more like a cost-effective and margin-driven perspective that you're focusing on the current categories, right? And for the different categories that you operate at the moment, what are the distribution channels you're using for these different categories and why?
We are slightly different from the other distributors. We see the types of distribution as to B and to C. For an example of JD Direct, of course, it's an online platform, it's online business, but it's B2B sales eventually. So our sales department is divided into 3 pillars teams: direct key accounts, mainly are from offline and include for Hema, etc. Wholesalers, and online flagship store, that's typically to see. How to prioritize in between depends on a lot. We're gonna review the historic sales data if there is any, or we learn from a similar product. In reality, we practice more realism. I will let the sales team go to their customers with the samples and asking their opinions directly. This helps me to make a more accurate forecast for the clients.
Right. Thank you, Paris. And one more question I have. This is something I'm actually really curious about. So what are the key qualities of a brand that you think are important when you decide to work with them? Is it packaging, or is it the taste? Is it prices, or the size of the company, or what is it?
Yeah, I believe from the above answers, you can see our style. We are very Swiss style. Therefore, the feedback from the retailers is the most important element to impact my decision. I refer to the sales forecast and make assumptions of profit and loss. If the full allocation EBIT after interest is positive, which means the business is doable for me. Because as one of the leading service providers across Asia Pacific, our charges are for the professional services. So, we are transparent, integrity and compliance, paying invoice in time. So I think, yeah, it's mostly about financial.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Paris. I know you probably have to go very soon, so feel free to just leave the webinar, but we will stay in touch, and then we'll pass on any questions that the brands might have to you. So sorry.
If someone else is asking for our credential, you can just feel free to share.
Sure. Thank you. Lovely to know. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So if I could move on to Aaron, please. Aaron from the Silk Initiative. So Aaron, my questions to you will be all around health and wellness sector. We know that the sector has been booming and has been gaining popularity among young consumers. So what do you think? How will personal health and wellness evolve in China in 2022? So this will include any plant-based food and drink products.
Sure. Yeah. Firstly, we see the sector really growing. There's a study from McKinsey where it says that 2/3 of Chinese consumers are spending more money on their health and wellness, and we really expect that to continue, especially with the pandemic. There's kind of 3 big shifts that we see. The first is people moving from like a problem-solving mentality to a more of like a holistic thinking. So less, I'm going to go to the gym to lose weight, and more these like self-care approaches. So how do I age healthily? How do I live a less stressful life? And a lot of that incorporates healthy food. And we're seeing big growth in demand for healthy food. So 0 sugar, 0 fat, 0 additives, as people look at those kind of broader lifestyle choices. And it's that last area in particular around wellness and stress. We speak to a lot of consumers, a lot of different age groups, and it's mental health and particularly stress that's coming up again and again, especially working age consumers who are exacerbated by like 996 culture and that kind of Jaban overtime culture. And we see a lot of opportunities in this space, of this like holistic space. So for example, Oatly have done a lot of great work. One of the panelists just mentioned Oatly. They've done a lot of great work working with gyms, working with fitness companies, like putting themselves as part of this like holistic, taking care of better care of yourself mentality. So that's the kind of first shift we see. The second one is wellness from an aging perspective. At the moment, about 1/5 of China's population is over 60, but we expect that to grow to about 1/3 by 2030. So how can your brand help solve this challenge of an aging population? And just within that, a couple of the things that we've seen, there's a bit of a propensity to like prescribe and overprescribe medicine. So how can your brand help people with, again, that more holistic living approach? When we've spoken to older consumers, a lot of them feel quite burdened, and they feel that they could become a burden as their like mental and health like declines. So how can you engage in that conversation of making people feel more positive, have more energy as they get older? And if you are targeting that segment, we've done quite a few studies where we've been speaking to older consumers and trying to work out like how to communicate with them. And what we found is that subtle messaging, for example, making packs white to represent gray hair, stuff like that, doesn't really land as well as specifically like 50+ and seniors. So the aging population, aging wellness, we think is going to be a really, really big thing. And then the last one is just around plant-based and plant-based meat. The predictions of our team and what we've seen is that we really don't think that plant-based meat is going to be living up to the hype in 2022 versus other opportunities. I remember when I was in Shanghai, seeing the queues outside of Starbucks when the new Beyond Meat line came out, and you know, the KFC crossovers with the nuggets. But actually that translation into sales has not been necessarily as strong as you would think it would be. There's this perception it's not necessarily healthier than real meat. It's full of additives, it's very processed. It still has a negative impact on the environment because of the factories. It doesn't necessarily taste like real meat like it kind of claims to. And an interest one we've seen a lot in the social chatter is around people thinking it's like a imperialist kind of thing where so there's the CEO of Impossible Foods who came out and he was like, you know, when someone in China eats beef, you know, the Amazon cries, the Amazon whimpers. And there's this idea that Chinese people are like, well, the amount of meat people eat in China is still per capita a lot less than the West, right? So they're kind of being blamed for what is often has come from the West. We see much more opportunity in plant-based milks. There's a big history of plant-based proteins in China, whether it's soy milk, walnut milk, coconut milk, almond milk. There's loads of successful local brands. So if we were going to go after plant-based, and again, you look at the success of someone like Oatly, milk is the area. So those kind of three things are an aging population's wellness, more holistic approaches to wellness. And then the other one would be around plant-based milks rather than plant-based meats.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I think I agree with you. I've seen these, you know, KFC and Starbucks selling plant-based in burgers for a long time, but never tried. So it just doesn't appeal to me. Sorry. yeah. My second question.
I hope they're not on the line.
No, sorry.
That's right. I agree.
Maybe tomorrow. Yeah. So, so if we take a deeper dive into the sector, so what are the functional benefits that you think the Chinese consumers are after in 2022?
Sure. So we have a food and drink tracker. It's called the Navigator, and we speak to about 600 respondents every quarter across 12 categories. This is everything from beer to meat. I think the first thing is, in general, we track product releases, and the big successes we're seeing are products that really put function over novelty, over style. So if you've got a strong functional core versus a flavor or change for change's sake, we do see a lot of opportunity there. We asked respondents what functional benefit do you expect in this category, and then also which functional benefit would you pay more money for. So across all the categories, the top three in terms of I expect are fatigue, so help with fatigue and tiredness, helping provide necessary vitamins, minerals, and supplements. And the last one, which I think is interesting around the pandemic, is immunity. And then when it comes to flipping that, and then which one would they expect to pay more for, the order actually reverses, and immunity becomes one of the real main ones that people are willing to pay for. That does vary by category. So for example, in dairy, we see a lot of people looking in for sleep benefits, or when it comes to snacking, it's more about like low indicators like sugar, salt, or fat. So yeah, those are the kind of top ones we see. If anyone wants to see the category data, just contact me after and we can send it. If you're on my LinkedIn, you'll see that I've actually posted the report publicly. So it's not data that we're kind of hiding away. I think the most interesting thing that we see actually in regards to functional benefits is, as we mentioned, like people are approaching functional benefits from a holistic way, right? So it's like my overall lifestyle. And the fact is that people do things that are not healthy. And one of the trends that we think is going to be big in 2022 is things like punk health, where people are aware that they're doing things that are not healthy. So I want to live a more holistic lifestyle, but at the same time, I'm going to go clubbing, I'm going to drink, I'm going to stay up late. So how can you help them hack that? They're aware that it's not good for them. And we've seen a lot of successful local brands, for example, putting goji berries or ginseng in whiskeys, or like lots of brands leveraging like TCM ingredients like drinkable ginseng, goji berries, ready to eat bird nest to help people like punk health, and contradict, right, things like clubbing and drinking and staying up late. So when it comes to functional benefits, the other thing we see is like, how can you help young people who are aware they want this holistic life, but they're also aware that they're going to go out, they're going to stay up late. So they need hacks. I think that's a really interesting functional benefits that are in 2022.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds just like me. I know it's not healthy, but just keep doing it.
The occasional goji berry and you're fine.
Oh yeah, I'm going to throw that question later to Stanley. How about adding goji to whiskey? Is that going to be successful? So yeah, I do have another question for you. It's about the sustainability. So this is a big, huge topic, I think, in the West, and a lot of brands, embrace that. Is that something that is going to be convincing to Chinese consumers? So how important is sustainability as a purchase driver in health and wellness space?
Sure. So I think this is really interesting because so we've got data that says that half of Chinese consumers are influenced by the environmental record of a company. But what we see, that does not translate into it being a significant purchase driver. So we did our own studies where we asked consumers based on various categories, what's the most important purchase driver? Sustainability is quite near the bottom, and it's just not, compared to quality and taste, it just doesn't go with it. Doesn't matter how sustainable, how eco-friendly a product is. People are not going to compromise quality, and they're not going to compromise taste. And actually, a lot of the time, if you go too far down sustainability, people think that it will negatively impact quality and taste. So, for example, these plant-based meats, right? People, it's environmental, it's sustainable, but actually, people don't view it as high quality. We don't want to be overly negative. We do see an opportunity in personal health and wellness, because if you can tie your purchase to how it contributes to personal health. So for example, your product being sustainable, right? Does that mean it's organic? Does that mean it comes from a clean environment? Does that mean the inside of this product is better for nutrition that's critical for consumers, especially if they're young, especially if they're older? So if we go back to the previous point, right? Quality matters, taste matters, health benefits matter. So if you can connect your sustainability to like personal benefit, then we see an opportunity for sustainability. If you're going, you eat our product and we're going to protect the Sumatran orangutans, we don't think that's going to land. It's about like, how can you connect that to the actual need of the consumer? And then one last thing with that is just, how we define sustainability. Sustainability is very broad. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it means everything from women's education to conservation. It's very, very broad. And actually, when we've asked Chinese consumers, like, how do they define sustainability? It's very much food safety, it's the environment, it's not that kind of broader sphere of sustainability. So if you're going to be talking about sustainability, talk about it from an environmental perspective, talk about it from a food safety perspective, a healthier environment, rather than labor rights and stuff like that. Like, that's just probably not where you want to get into, and is viewed as something as like, as part of the kind of government responsibility rather than personal responsibility. So there is an opportunity around sustainability, but you've got to connect it to that kind of selfish personal benefits. rather than the altruistic side of it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. So in the end, it's all about me. So how does that benefit me? If not, then
Exactly.
Sorry, but why should I care?
And it can work and it can correlate. But at the same time, if you're, but it just don't do it from an altruistic perspective. It's got to be from like how then it's a sustainable product, and that makes it a better, superior product. Better welfare, better functional benefits.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Now, as I promised, we'll throw that goji in whiskey question to Stanley. No, not really. No, we'll talk about spirits and wines, which is one of my favorite topics. And so Telford, I know, is quite a successful distributor in China. We all know the case about Jägermeister, which is a phenomenon. So so what do you think, Stanley, are some of the key consumption trends you have observed in 2021 for whiskey sector in China? Are people still after single malt, for example? What do you think?
Yeah, the answer is yes, definitely. They still go for the single malt. But when you look into some of the global data, so you were surprised to see, and like China has like more than 20% of the global spirits consumptions. But no matter from like value or volume perspective, but when you look closer, you will see like in China, 96% of the spirit consumption are contributed by baijiu, only baijiu. Only 4% is from like imported spirits, including all like brown spirits, like cognac, whiskey, and then some other spirits like gin, vodka, or something. So when you look more closer, like 3% is from cognac, and only 1 is from whiskey.
That's sad.
Only 1, and you have to divide it into single malt, blended American whiskey, Japanese whiskey. So, but whiskey and cognac is actually benefit from like being a brown spirits. It's quite different from the local spirit, which is baijiu. You all know that. But most of the growth happened to between like 10 years ago in the club, driven by the sound of blended whiskey, like Louis Salou, Johnny Walker. They usually mixed with the green tea and very highly consumption in a big group, in a big clubs, like a big group outlets. So that's kind of reasons in the last 10 years, the big group like Perica, like MHD, they're putting so many money into these like outlets. So that's the outlets they can bring the volume. But in the recent 10 years, we see the trend is about the single malt whiskeys. So we study what's the reason. There's several reasons, because one is kind of like, I'm not sure if you know Penfolds. Penfolds got the numbers on their bottles, but whiskeys, they got an age statement on their bottles as well. It's very easier for Chinese consumers to know, okay, so 12 is the beginning, and then 30 years or 60 years is the best. So it's very easy for them to understand what's the good, better for the whiskey. And another reason is they got so many like that performed well in the auction events. So recently in Hong Kong, Sotheby just sold the Hemel price is about 8 million Hong Kong dollars for one set of whiskey, which is Dalmore, with the brand we distributed, and it's only 6 bottles. So it's surprise to not even the whiskey drinkers, but globally to see, okay, the whiskey can worth that much. So that's kind of reasons, not only the whiskey drinkers are go for whiskey, but even the investor and the collectors. But only the single malt is different story. So it's always have the very huge the growth rates each year. Right now it's like 50% every year. The blended actually decreased a lot in the last 10 years. There are 2 reasons. One is there's China anti-corruption happened in, I think it's 2013. And suddenly there's lots of the restriction in the consumptions. And another reason is the last 2 is because of the pandemic, which club and the big outlets affect a lot. So one case is in some cities, the biggest club always closed down. So that's kind of reasons the blended, its effects, and it dropped a lot in the last 2 years. Let's talk about other whiskeys like American whiskey and Japanese whiskey. Japanese whiskey always, the requirement is quite strong every year, but the base and the growth rate is quite smaller. It's because the allocation, thereby allocation, they have very small supply constraints. So each year, I heard from Centauri, they can sell the annual targets in first quarter. So there's nothing to be sell in the next.
Wow.
Months. Yeah. So it's quite easy to be a salesperson in Centauri for the whiskey. And for the American whiskey, still it's only like dominated by two brands, Jack Daniel and Jim Beam. Jack Daniel is already been in China market for decades, and they are the biggest brand. But even right now, their volume and the growth rate every year is very stable and limited. Jim Beam is the one only promoting highball in the market. So they're like, and even right now, very premium whiskey brand like an American whiskey brand like Wolford or like Menches. They're doing cocktail. They're doing mixology strategy in the markets, which I don't really get it, because the one bottle, the volume is like the value is like 1,000 per bottle, but they're still using that for the mixer. So I don't really get that. And I think
how does it work?
Yeah, that's really not worth it. So we also have some of the premium American whiskey, like Sagamore, like High West, where we will always study how to promote it in the market. We're still going on for that. But at this point, every single brand American whiskey, they are using famous bartender for their brand ambassadors. So yeah, we have to work it out for that.
So for whiskey, do you think that the major distribution channel is still on trade? So it's still the bars, or is it also retail, for example?
For the blended, of course, it's definitely on trade, and you will see they are pushing some of the efforts and the investment on EC as well, and in recent times. Because like I said, during the COVID pandemic period, lots of the outlets closed. So they have to do something for the EC channels to make it up. So I just know, like Chivas, they're doing so many gift pack for the like 13 years old, 20 years old whiskeys with very bright, colorful packing design. So it's like attract the young consumer to do so. But for the single malt, it's actually the drinking scenario is not that big party, big gathering. It's more like friends, like go out, hang out with friends in a small bar, or even like enjoy the whiskey at home yourself. So the off-trade trend and the EC trend is quite popular, and it's getting up for the single malt whiskey.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, and then I think we'll probably want to move on to the wine. So I believe we should have a lot of wine dealers, hopefully, in the audience, because from all different countries in Europe. So we know that traditionally China import a lot of wine from Australia, but we are not on our best terms with Australia at the moment, which gives some opportunity to European wine dealers. So so what kind of wines Telford are looking for, and what kind of price range do you usually adopt?
Yeah, as you know, like our Australian wine is the tariff it's more than 200% at the moment. So lots of the importers, like the Australian wine importers like us, we actually stock up at the end of 2020. And then to have some of the space to sell, have some stock to sell in the last year, but it's almost done. So each Australian wine importers, they make some of the solutions. Some of them, as I know, like Rosemary Trade, they already launched the South Africa Rosemary Trade versions in China. And then Panfor is looking for the local wine supplier partnership in China, and they just announced. I think they will have the wine produced at second half year. And besides that, we are going to launch chili yellowtail, if you want to ask. But
For sure. Yeah.
interesting to know, because we have the rule on the label. We're quite different from other Australian wine brands. We have the rule, the identical ID image for the Australia, and we have the rule on the label. So it's kind of weird for us to make other region yellowtail, but we already accept that. So it's like a Calorosi. It's a very famous American brand, wine brand, but it's produced in Chile, in Australia, in American, but the identical tasting is Calorosi. So we also want to educate consumer for that. And in another way, we're trying to not only us, I think all of the Australian wine importers, they are looking for some of the other region wine to make that gap. So some of the famous and the popular wine in the market, in China market, it will be like the Chile and the American. So that's for all the new world wine. For the old world wine, the only one region is the dominated the market, which is France. So when you look at the share of the China wine category, so in I think 7 years ago, local wine have the 80%, and the imported wine have 20%. Like 2 years ago, the local wine dropped to like 55%, and the imported wine is 45%. And from that, like more than 50 is from France, only France. So used to be Australia wine used to be the second stage, but right now we're thinking like the Chile wine, America is picking up. You will see Contratoro, they invest a lot last year to getting this market, to take over this market from Australian wine.
Right. And do you observe, who are the major consumers for wines in China? Is it young consumers, or what kind of age group?
Age group like me.
Yeah, I agree. Like me, like you, yeah. I mean, so like younger than for example 10 years ago, because when I think when I was growing up, and it was like the wine drinkers are kind of business people. It's something new to Chinese, right? So yeah, so as youngsters, we didn't have a lot of access to wines.
For the young, we will see the trend. The young consumers seems to be drafted from the wine to the like low ABV spirits or liqueur. So they prefer like right now Jägermeister or single malt to present their like a person identical like positions in the society. So the wine actually is dropped last year, or I think it's next 2 years is still struggling, and it's almost in the bottom. It's gonna bounce up, I think. And yeah, wine used to be only for like business occasions, like business dinners, banqueting, and it's kind of blended whiskey drinking scenario. Like once since the anti-corruption happens, the wine actually dropped a lot, especially for the local one, the master class, cheaper wine. But for the imported wine, most of the consumer is from the middle class, or like someone is get you to the Western style, Western lifestyle. So it's kind of like a single malt whiskey. They will prefer to drink this wine category in the small bar with the friends, with themselves. So the consumption is kind of like dropped every each year, because the banqueting and then the business, the large group of gathering, it's not going to be, especially during the COVID pandemic period.
Right. So that kind of leads to my next question. So what kind of drinks or spirits do you think will be popular, will be trendy in 2022? So for a brand to get into China, what kind of spirits or drinks should they promote? Is it going to be low ABV, like you said, cocktails, or is it is it gin or cognac or whiskey? What do you think will be really popular?
As I know, like all the brands, I mean, all the groups, big groups, they are working on the RTD. Normally, like it's gin tonic or it's apple spritz, or it's very easy to make cocktails to be the RTD. And I think the time is not really there in the this year. I think it's as a trend, maybe for the next 2 or 3 years, but not this year. Because when we talk to the consumers, they normally prefer to go to the bar to talk to the bartender, or they know there's a guest shift in some of the popular bars. They will go there, talk to the bartenders. Either rather than say drink the RTD at home by themselves. So the cocktail cocktail brand, mixology brand, like a gin, vodka, like a tequila, this kind of brand. The most of the spirits are considered in the Western style bars, cocktail bars, lounge, like international hotels, like this kind of outlets. Not really home consumptions. So it brings to a different strategy, like lots of the brands, they are working on RTD, but still they are putting lots of the money to doing like a master class, like a bartending match, the global match, or some of the a bartending incentive. So that's the kind of reasons, because the volume still comes from the outlet, the on-premise outlets.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Stanley, for the wonderful insights. I think we can open the floor to some questions. So can I ask please Aaron and Stanley to stay online, as I think there will be some questions for you too. Let's see. Okay, the first question we have, would like to have contact details of the panelists. Stanley and Aaron, can I share your contact details with our audience today?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I think I've seen a question on wine. Okay, this one will be, I think, for Stanley. Why do they think in China that only these countries make fantastic wines and not other European countries? Do you think other countries have also the chance?
That's a very challenging question. I'm not saying only this country and the regions they are making the fantastic wine. I'm only saying these kind of countries, the wine, the tasting portfolio is quite getting used to be by the Chinese consumers. They're quite smooth. They are easy to drink. The price is good, and the most of the European wine, they need to breathe. They take time to appreciate. So not really for the wine beginner drinkers. So that's kind of reason, like most of the old world wine, not except France, most of the old world wine, the consumption and the volume every each year is tiny compared to other regions.
Right. So there's that kind of established kind of perception amongst the consumers that French wine's good, Italian wine's good, for example, and then it will take some time, and it's not impossible, but it will take some time to kind of introduce the new products and do education. So thank you, Stanley.
And I think there are another reasons. Lots of the new wine, they are putting the single variety on the label. It's quite easy for the consumer to choose. When you eat steak tonight, you choose cab or Shiraz. But if you want to eat seafood, you choose another wine. But for the old wine, they normally blend it, and they have like a very rare variety, the grape variety on the labels. So it's quite difficult and confusing the consumers to choose.
Yeah, I think that's, I noticed that as well from the packaging, from the, the wine label also, the wines from, New Zealand or Chile, for example, are quite, are standing out basically, and it's sending out younger and easier messages. Agreed. So I think, let me see what else, other questions we have. I think this one's probably for Aoyun or for Ali, if you could answer. This is from Alessio. So we have received many emails from European countries, companies that have successfully completed a registration for one category. However, they want to add products to the same category. And then there is this add product button, but it doesn't work. So have you encountered that, and what's the solution?
Actually, our team haven't encountered this kind of situation. So I would like you to check if your operation system is Windows 7 or 10, and make sure you use Chrome browser. And if the problem still have, you can call maybe the GAGS service hotline, which is 12360. And I think they will give you some guide. And if they cannot solve this question, they will give you another number for the single window registration system. And we have came across this same thing, and we just email them the problem and the screenshots, and they will solve the problem little by little.
Right. So that hotline, we've tried that. Obviously, we tried that in Chinese language. So if, for example, English-speaking person, do they speak English?
I think 12360 have English
option.
Option.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Another question also for you, Ali. Which is the language to be used for the documents? The enterprise statement, and then the documents that you need to attach. For instance, in Italy, we often have this problem with the business license. So if a document from an Italian company, everything will be in Italian, or does it have to be in either Chinese or English?
For the thing, the GAG didn't give a very exact reply. We suggest you for sure upload your original copy, and it's better to have English language on it. If no, we suggest you can attach a translate copy as well for English.
Okay.
Or Chinese if you can. I think the translate copy will be helpful. But for sure, original is
required. Yes.
Required.
Okay, and one more question for you, Ali. It's from James. How much detail do you have to include for the product name? Is this per SKU? For example, if you were importing crisps, would you have register each flavor? You have salted vinegar, cheese, and onion, or is this the same for different package sizes? So how detailed do you have to go? Do you have to register each flavor and each package size, or is that not necessary?
I think per SKU is a little too specific. You can, for the different package sizes, you can, let me think. You can upload the pictures on the product picture, but it can be it can be the same product, because all the ingredients are the same. You just need to show them, okay, I have different packages. But for the different flavor, we suggest you to upload as different products, because the ingredients might be different. So it's based on your smallest sales unit.
Thank you. Hope that answered the question. And how much time does it take to get approval from customs?
There's really no very exact time. We have sometimes got the outcome within 1 day, and sometimes takes 5 or 6 days. Yeah, it all depends.
Yeah, I think the average takes a week or sometimes less, depending on their workload. Yeah,
right. Really less than 1 week.
Yeah. Please repeat which company Paris is from. So she has already left, but she's from DKSH. It's an importer and distributor based in Shanghai. Okay, I think, let's see what else we have. There's a question for Aaron. Aaron, if you're still online. I am an extra virgin olive oil producer from Italy, a product that has very strong benefits for heart health. Are Chinese consumers caring about that? What will be your tips to position it in the market?
So heart health definitely. When it comes to like the most important purchase drivers, ultimately it's about quality and it's about taste. So that's they're really the most important things that you'd want to be focusing on, is the superior quality of it and the taste. When we talk about quality like that, a lot of that comes from, for example, country of origin. And yes, if there is that added functional benefits, it'll be good. The only thing to think of with your particular product that I'd be most thinking about is how can consumers use it? So is it something that can be incorporated into local cooking, or is it something that has to be used specifically with European style cooking? Because if it's only used in European style cooking, that means it's probably more suitable for on trade in restaurants, things like that. Because the number of people home cooking Western food is probably much more limited. So that would be the most important thing I'd want to understand, is how you actually use this product, how a Chinese consumer would use this product.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. So I think I have one more question for Stanley. Can I pick up contact with you for one export in China from Hungary? So I assume that's a yes. If that's a yes, then okay, let's do this. After today's session, we're going to share all the presentations to everybody. But if you require contact with a specific panelist, please write to either us or to Alessio from USME Center. Then we'll pass on the contact of the panelists to you. Hope that works. So we're not sharing contact to everyone, but if you have that request, please write to us. We will share. Okay, I think that's the end. That's all the questions we have. Okay, awesome. So if there's no more questions from the audience and no final comments from the panelists, and then we'll just close the session now. Thank you very much for taking the time to participate, and thank you very much for all the panelists for taking your time to be with us here.
Yeah, maybe
Alessio,
if I may
to
add
you.
something, yes, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, thanks, as I mentioned, thanks to all the speakers for the excellent presentations. I think you touched upon very interesting points and insightful aspects which are not always known to everybody. I would like to say make one final comment. We mentioned about issues maybe with Chinese language, if you have to call the customs and you obviously don't know Chinese. You can, making some self-promotion here, obviously, you can of course contact the USME Center. We will be able to assist you to call GAC on your behalf, to send emails in Chinese on your behalf. We have done it and we will be happy to do so. Of course, also the speakers or CBC, I mean, you can count on organizations like us or the speakers directly. I think it was mentioned a few times, we were going to share the slides the slides of this event after the event. Obviously, we're also going to upload the recording of this webinar on the USME Center's YouTube channel, and you can rewatch it, you can share it. Of course, we might need a couple of days, but it will be there at some point. That's it. I think I would like to thank you, all the speakers again, all the participants, and yeah, for any issue, feedback, get in contact with us. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, and hope you all the best with our China journey.